Hey there everyone, welcome back. I'm Janelle with Lasting Impression Horsemanship, and I have Nova here again. We're just gonna kind of continue with some of her training. I've put a ride on her now already, but I'm gonna kind of go back and kind of refine some of her groundwork with her. She's still not super proficient on the forehand turns yet. So I'm going to go ahead and see if we can get that a little bit better. She has a tendency of wanting to kind of push into you with her hip as you ask her to move those shoulders around away from you. So I'll see if she'll kind of give us an example of what I mean by that, and then I can point it out as she does it. So let's see if she'll go ahead and turn for me here. Good. So there she's just trying to walk forward, which isn't that big of a deal. I'm just going to lift up on the rope here and ask her to not walk forward. Or I can block with this stick here too. Okay. Good. So I'm just going to ask for a couple steps here too. She still hasn't gotten this down pat super well yet. She's just kind of struggling there. Good. With getting this super proficient yet, and it just takes time and repetition and everything. She's definitely improved significantly, don't get me wrong, so there's definitely progress. Good. But you see how she kind of still backs up and still sometimes takes a step behind and stuff in the front. It's not the consistent crossover every single step like it's supposed to be. She's definitely getting better about it and getting more consistent about it, and doing more of it correctly, because initially she kept doing this where she would step behind the opposite foot, and she's doing it correctly a lot more often now. And she's not doing this at the moment, but I'll see if she decides to or not. So watch this hip here. There, she did it. So right there, she pushed into me with that hip, and since she pushed into my space here with that hip, I went and corrected her, and I'm just going to go back and ask her to move those forequarters away again. But I have to go ahead and correct her moving this hip into my space, or me moving her front end isn't going to mean anything to her at all, because in her mind she's still pushing into she's still pushing into me into this space here. So as you can see, this is improving a lot since the first lesson, but it's still not 100% yet. Good. That was a pretty good one. Very good. Yeah. Good. Very nice. All right. I do like her eye seems a little bit calmer too. I mean, her head's still up in the air and stuff, but her eye has a little bit calmer of a look to it than it sometimes can. So that's something to kind of note as well. It's just these like subtle signs that your horse can be telling you that you can pick up on, that can tell you just little things to see where you're at and how you're doing and how you're progressing and everything. So just paying attention to what your horse is telling you is super important too. So she does really good with her hindquarter yields. Most horses do, because if you just lift up with that rope, a lot of them, they easily connect that to the back feet for the most part. But again, it's still something you kind of have to start by doing on the ground to have it get built into their nervous system for when you're under saddle and you actually take that rein, lift it up, and disengage the hindquarters then, if you need to. Good girl. There you go. Forehand. Good. Right, so there she was gonna move that hip into me. Good. Good boy, or good girl, I mean. Yeah. Okay, so the other thing that I like to do is the changing direction with the purpose, and I realize I make this look really easy, and it still seems like people have a hard time doing it even after they watch me do it multiple times, which is easy to do, so don't feel bad if it happens to you. But what I do with the changing direction as a purpose, or with a purpose, I guess I should say, is what I'm going to do is I'm going to yield the horse's hindquarters 2 steps, yield the horse's forequarters 2 steps, all while changing and going in the circle in the opposite direction. So say we're going in the circle this direction, I'm going to change hands with my stick and string. I'm going to reach down with my hand that's closest to her tail. I'm going to reach this rope down, slide it, lift it up to disengage those hind feet at least 2 steps. Then I'm going to push this front end over, away from me, and get her to move those shoulders out at least 2 steps. And then I'm just going to ask her to come back forward off of a soft feel with just the clip here and of the rope, and feel of me just lifting that rope forward a little bit and asking her to move back forward. So again, I make this look really easy. It's not as easy as I make it look. So if you struggle, you're not the only one, and lots of people do. So don't feel bad about that. So I'll do it again here, show you. So I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to make sure she keeps staying walking. Take my stick, get ready to swap it around. So I'm going to swap hands, take my hand closest to her tail, slide it down, disengage your hindquarters. So here is where I want to make sure she does their full disengagements. There you go, just 2 where she crosses over, and then have her walk. So there I actually had to take a couple steps towards her tail in order to get her to do her full disengagement, because she didn't quite take a couple full steps initially, so I just had to move my body in order to get her to do those full disengagements. But that's why I call it with a purpose. We're changing direction with a purpose, because to me it's more important that we do those yields than to just change directions. So if I were to do this again, I need it to be thoughtful on what I'm doing. So I'm gonna go ahead, ask her to disengage. So 1, 2. So here she didn't do 1. So there she didn't disengage all the way. So I'm just 1. So there she didn't disengage. 1, 2. Open the door. 3, 4, and come forward. Okay. So you see how I had to keep disengaging her, because she didn't keep crossing that hind foot cross over the other one, and she only took 1 step and would disengage it and not the 2. So I just kept asking until I got 2 consecutive steps. And here she's trying to stop on me and look at me, so I need to get her to move forward a little bit here. Good. So change direction, get ready to change with my hands, slide down, disengage. Good. Good. There, good. That was a really good one. So when you do your disengagement with the hindquarters too, your body's going to face her tail as you do the disengagement. So swap your hand with your stick, get your hand with your closest to her tail, slide it down, face her hindquarters. 1, 2, open the door. 3, 4, ask her to keep going. There. And you see how since I've started changing direction like this and getting her to cross her feet over and everything, how her head has really come down and she's really started using this thinking mindset. Come on. And she's starting to kind of relax from it. This is a really good exercise to really get them thinking and using that thinking side of their brain, because it's really getting them to focus on what their feet are doing, crossing them over, making sure they're not going to trip over themselves and everything like that. So it's pretty common for people to like to just go, when they work with their horse, go straight into doing like lunging or something. But in reality, it's better to do something along the lines of like your hindquarter yields, forequarter yields, just lots of changing directions like this, and getting those feet crossing over before you do your lunging portion and doing a lot of your circles and stuff. You're going to get a lot more of your brain focused on you by getting the feet to cross over and everything, more so than what you are if you just ask her to come up into a trot here. So I would have a lot more anxiety right now if I didn't already do it where I changed directions and stuff with her multiple times. I already had that thinking mindset set in and everything there. Oh, Nova. Good girl. Here you go. Good girl. Good girl. All right. And it is important to make sure your horse is listening to you and focused on you. Make sure the ears listening to you, their nose is tipped in towards you, their body's in the C-shaped frame, they're engaging using their hindquarters, they're in that right or correct body frame. It's easy for you to be, or I see, it's fairly common of a thing I see is people get too lax with their horses, and the horses literally pull little stunts on them that don't seem like much to someone that's not got a lot of experience with horses, but someone with a trained eye can see exactly what that horse is doing, and they might not be being mean or bad or anything like that, and it doesn't really seem like they're doing much as far as being disrespectful or anything like that on the ground, especially to someone who might be kind of new to horses. But someone with a trained eye can pick up on those little things that a horse might be doing that that can kind of really point things out that they're being disrespectful and stuff towards that person. For example, just earlier today, I had that happen with me. I have a horse that I use for lessons, and she's a really good horse. But she still does, just like every other horse, challenges new people, sees what she can get away with, if they're really gonna, make her do what you're asking of her, or if she's gonna be able to kind of push you around and stuff. And the person we were doing a lesson with this morning, she could figure out that she could kind of I guess lead what was going on here. So like she was leading and stuff, or he was leading her, and she'd go to stop and they'd stop, but come on, here, Nova. And then they'd stop and he'd step back here, and she's like way ahead of him, and I was like, well, you're gonna have to like bump her nose back and tell her to get back off you, because that's her basically kind of just pushing through you and telling you that she's going to be running the show, and she's the one that's basically walking you there. And he wasn't following through and making her actually listen and do stuff. And same with like the forequarter yield and stuff like that. When we did the forequarter yield with her, he would do it, and he would do it, but he would get about like this close before she would start moving her shoulders over. Okay, well that is way too close to be in my comfort zone here, my safety zone. That's way too close for my body to be this close before she's moving away. She should be moving away way before then. Okay, so she should be moving away as if my hands were out here. She's got to know that she better get out of my way, because otherwise she's going to get a bump in the shoulder or the neck there and get her to continue moving. So that is something that you have to keep black and white from as well, and to really reiterate too, because if you're getting where your whole body and stuff's running into the horses before they're actually moving, that's one telltale sign that your horse isn't fully respecting you. Because then I went with the same horse, did the same exact thing he was, and she was already moving like this and keeping my safety space here. And we both just did the same exact exercise with the same exact cue. And the difference was in the respect between the people that horse had. So she had more respect for me, and she knew that she had better get out of my way, because if she didn't, that she would get reprimanded and get kind of bumped in the neck to get out of the way. Where with him, she knew that she probably didn't have to, and there wasn't going to be much of a, I guess, there wasn't going to be much motivation for her to move out of the way, or at least not do it with any type of energy or anything like that. So that's something to really keep in mind as well. So just always just going through and refining and making sure that all these yields are constantly working is super important. That's why it's the first things we teach. Forequarter, hindquarter yield, your drift yields. All these yields are what it is that are going to be used when training your horse. Because you do your corrections and your rewarding through these yields here. So whether your reward might be just letting her walk forward on a loose rein here, and this is reward of just letting her have the peace and relaxation of just moving forward and you leaving her alone. Okay, so say she did something wrong that she wasn't supposed to, or kind of screwed up or something like that. Well, if she screws up, I might have to go and say, hey, I need to take your hindquarters away. I didn't want you to do that. Maybe we got to push your forequarters away. Now I'm going to ask you to go back forward, and that's going to be your reward to go forward. So your yields are going to be your kind of rewarding and corrections during it all, and you just have to be able to control your horse at all times and be able to control their feet, and you need to be able to do it really well on the ground, and if you expect to be able to do anything really well under saddle. Okay, so technically I probably got a little bit ahead of myself by riding her already. And she wasn't bad, and I know she's been ridden before, and she's got a really good mind on her. She really tries to be good, so I wasn't too worried about her being like trying to be bad or reactive or anything like that. I didn't think she'd give me any problems there, but ideally, she probably I should have spent more time on this groundwork here and really got this a little bit more refined. Okay, so here's an example too. So you see how I dropped my rope here? Okay, so with the horses, we have to, one of the things we try and do is we give them responsibility for their feet. Okay, so come on. So when I lunge them and stuff, I like to kind of turn my shoulders so we're walking the same direction as her. If anything, my energy is going towards her nose, okay? But for the most part, my shoulders and her shoulders are heading in the same direction. I'm just going to walk in a small circle. She's walking in a bigger circle around me, okay? So she's figuring out that the pattern she's supposed to be on is in a circle around me, okay? This is making her responsible for her feet right now. My body energy is not telling her to keep moving her feet right now. There's no energy going towards her right now to tell her to continue moving. It's just, I told her to walk and she's staying going on the circle. That's what I asked her to do, and that's what she's doing. So she's getting where she's kind of crowding into me here. So I'm just gonna shoo her out a little bit. That's not a big deal. I just asked her to move out. She moved out, and here she's kind of crowding in. So I'm just gonna put a little bit of energy towards her and she walks back out. Not a big deal about it. Just go back and fix it is all you got to do. Same with this. She kind of came in. Just go back and correct it. So, I'm just going to kind of let her be responsible for her feet here. If I were to ask her to trot, I can bring her up to trot. It's going to be her responsibility to stay in this trot. If she breaks down and I don't tell her to, I'm going to go ahead and correct her. It's going to be her responsibility, but I'm not going to bring her up, even though I could tell she's about ready to stop and break back down to walk. I'm not going to go and correct her until she actually breaks down into the actual walk there. So you see how it wasn't until she actually broke down to that walk that I went through and actually kind of tapped her on the butt there. So I had to let her and commit to the mistake before I went and corrected her. Because if I correct her before she commits to that mistake and before she makes the mistake, I'm babysitting her and micromanaging her, and she's never going to learn that she's got to be responsible for her own feet, and she's always going to expect to have a babysitter there, okay? So this is another example, too, is it makes your horse be responsible for feet. So it's kind of like, and this is fairly common, I've noticed with like show horses and stuff. You'll have a lot of show horses are shown with quite a bit of leg pressure and stuff on them. So just to keep them into the canter and stuff and to keep them in frame and everything, a lot of horses are used to being ridden with quite a bit of leg on them at all times. When I train my horses, I personally don't want to have my leg on my horse the entire time, just because I want it to canter. I don't want to have to keep there and sit there and put pressure on it with my left leg to have it continue loping on its right lead the entire time. I want my horse to learn that they are responsible for their own feet, and I'm not going to sit there and hold their hand the entire time I ask them to canter. So I want them to learn that you better stay where I put you, and it's your job to learn to stay where I put you. Okay, so if I tell you to canter, I want you to stay at this speed, at this consistency, until I tell you to do something different. Okay, so here she keeps breaking down to the walk, and I didn't tell her to. And I corrected her a couple times, gave her the opportunity to fix it, and she didn't. So then I got a little bit firmer on my correction here, and I actually went and touched her instead of just clucking to her and stuff. So she's going to take me a little bit more serious about it. And as you can see, she's maintaining this trot a lot better now. Okay? So this is what I'm saying about having my horse be responsible for their own feet. I want my horse to be responsible for their feet on the ground here. I want them to be responsible for them when they're under saddle. And this was my bad. I kind of got distracted when I was talking, and I shouldn't have let her walk so many steps. I'm going to ask her to bring me back down to walk. So walk. So I'm just going to disengage the hindquarter one step. Good. Good. Okay, so I don't want to have to sit there and have my leg on her the entire time or anything like that when I'm riding. It's just going to make me tired, make me use more leg muscles, everything. If I want to be cantering or something when I'm riding my horse, I'm going to ask them to canter, and then once they're doing what they want, I'm going to release the pressure, let them know that that was the correct answer, and then I just want to just have to stand there or sit there and enjoy the ride that they're giving me. Okay, if they make a mistake, screw up, break down, speed up, I'll just go back and correct them and then bring it back to where they need to be, whether speeding them back up to the speed we were at or slowing them back down, whichever it is. I'm just gonna go back, correct them as soon as they do it, and then release as soon as they're back to the spot I want them at. So that's going to be how I train my horses. Again, some of them are trained much differently, but that's just what kind of makes sense when I train my horses, I guess, in a way to make it super clear for the horses themselves to understand, because if they're doing something right, they'll feel the release of the pressure. So when they're doing the correct speed and stuff, I want them to know that, hey, I don't want to have to sit here and continuously put pressure on you with my leg, and then say as I'm riding you, if I have to always have pressure on you with my leg, say my leg gets tired and my pressure decreases, and then the horse is like, well, does that mean I have to stop or I can slow down or whatnot? When it's just fatigue that's really gotten it, so my horse is, or my legs decreasing the pressure, not the fact that I want the horse to change anything that it's doing. So that's the reason I train kind of the way I do there. To me, it's a little bit more black and white to them. They realize that the release of pressure is the correct answer. That's the right thing that they're supposed to be doing. And B, it makes it a lot easier for me to ride this horse. Okay? I'm not saying that there's anything wrong with doing it the other way and stuff. It's just the way I do it and the way I prefer, I guess. Okay? I think a lot of the reason it's fairly common for a lot of show horses to get be ridden with a lot of leg and contact and stuff like that is it helps frame their body up in the correct body frame, and it helps hold them together and use their muscles and stuff like they're supposed to. But if you still train them the way I kind of do, it still does the same exact thing, because if they're moving correctly and everything, then they're still using the same muscles as what you're trying to accomplish with having your contact and stuff on your legs. So if I were to add contact here underneath their belly here, like with say I had spurs on or something, I rolled them and I asked her to kind of raise her back up here, a lot of them will have where they lift their bellies up and really engage those belly muscles and stuff. Where when I do it, I want them to just learn how to do it correctly from the beginning. So she's kind of at the beginning of all this, and she's not got the muscles and stuff built up for it. So she's got, you see how her back is like super howled out here and stuff here. Ideally, she would engage her belly muscles a little bit more. So I can kind of work at that by having her in a small circle around me. And I can get her to engage those stomach muscles by taking my stick here and just tapping it kind of where my leg would hang on her. And I'm just going to have her get that C-frame a little bit better. So right now her body's quite straight and her ribs are quite straight. I want her ribs to have a little bit more curve to them. So her nose is curved in and her feet are reaching up, but her ribs are not bent like I want them to. So I want her ribs to be pushed out a little bit more and get a little bit more shape in her body. So she's 15 right now. She doesn't have I mean, she's going to be a little bit stiffer stuff. It's stuff that's going to take time for her to loosen up and stuff. And it's going to just take practice and time. So what I'm going to do is to try and get her to get the C frame going. I'm going to continue to ask her to go forward. And this is where my body language is going to kind of adjust compared to what like walking this way, because I'm going to be more focused on trying to get her ribs to be bending here, and I'm going to kind of tap her belly on the other side and try and coax those ribs to the outside. And you can see how that's really starting to get her to move those ribs to the outside, and she's just getting a little confused right now, which is okay. And I just wanted to she's just trying to figure out what it is I'm asking of her. And so I didn't increase my pressure at all. I just kept it consistent until I got her to walk back forward. She's trying to just figure out what it was I was asking her to do, because I haven't gotten to the point of really getting after what I want her ribs to do and getting this flexion in her ribs. Okay, so her nose is in a good position right now. I just want her ribs to get more in the position of flexing to the outside. So she's getting more of a frame to her right now than what she had initially. Good. So you see, even now she's reaching up even more with her hindquarters here, because I'm really getting after this ribs to get to the outside. And you see how her feet are even going up underneath her more. So she's starting to straighten out. So I'm going to pull this rope back a little bit towards her tail, continue to push those ribs to the outside, and bend that nose in towards her tail and the inner shoulder. Okay, and you see how her head's coming down, getting nice and relaxed, everything there. So it's all about getting that shape of them and having them maintain and holding that shape on their own without having to consistently tell them the entire time and hold them in this frame themselves. Okay, so that's what I'm going to be looking for, is having her maintain this frame and get the ribs to stay to the outside and everything on her own, and hold that frame on her own without me having to go back and correct her all the time. So there, she's doing pretty good at maintaining this frame here. I haven't had to go back and correct her. She's reaching up underneath herself. Her ribs are going to the outside here. Nose is tipping in. So there, she's starting to get where she's slowing down, thinking I'm going to get ready to stop her, but it's not. But she's getting that little bit more of a shape to her. Okay, and it's probably difficult for you guys to see in camera because it is very subtle shape, or subtle change in her body frame. But you got to remember that it's going to be slow progress. You got to take a little bit at a time. Just 1% improvement every day. In 100 days, you got 100% improvement. So you just want to look for a little bit of growth there every day and improvement every day, and just you really want them to just understand what it is you're looking for, and just kind of grasp the concept of what you're trying to teach them. Okay, so she actually flexes better going to the left here. She's not as stiff to the left. I can tell that I don't have to kind of bump her ribs to the outside as much here. She just kind of naturally is able to bend this way a little bit better, and that's pretty typical for horses. They usually have one side that they can move a little, or bend it, or flex a little bit better than the other. So doing like flexes and stuff to the right and working more to the right is going to be a little bit more helpful to her versus the left. I mean, you're going to have to still do both of them because you got to teach both sides of it, but the right one's going to be the one that needs the most work. Okay, and so I've had a horse before too that was much more unbalanced than what she was, and she was really, really off going to the right. And so we did lots and lots and lots of groundwork just going to the right and right and right. And in the end, she ended up getting quite good about going to the right and stuff. And you could still tell almost naturally she could move better going to the left, as far as like her body movement was able to move better to the left. But being we practiced so much moving to the right, like her comfort, I guess you'd say, or her maybe mental comfort was a little bit more comfortable moving to the right, because we had worked at that direction so much. So like physically the right wasn't her strong suit or anything like that, but being we ended up having to work at it so much and work at it so consistently and stuff, it just kind of came to be more of her normal, more comfortable way to go, because we were really working at that. And it wouldn't take much to get her a little bit more balanced out. We just have to work with the opposite direction a little bit more. And it wasn't like she was really off balance necessarily per se. I wouldn't really say as far as like flexion goes. It's just she seems slightly more mentally comfortable, I guess, going to the right than she did the left after we did so much work to the right. Okay, if that makes any sense to you guys. So, but that's the difference between kind of just the natural body talent and kind of like how the body's put together and the body's ability to move, and the actual like mental and emotional collection and ability to kind of comprehend all that and keep the emotions together and everything there. So that's kind of what I really look for when I'm looking for a horse to kind of maintain their shape. That shape is really important. Getting their body built up is not something that happens over time or overnight. It's something that just takes time and practice and consistency, like minimum 5 days a week I'm talking here that we're working. And even though we might not be doing a ton of like running or anything like that, I'm really focused on the actual precision of making sure she's doing it correctly. And that's the same thing with my changing direction with purpose and stuff. I'm more concerned about doing the actual maneuvers and stuff correctly versus the actual speed and just accomplishing the fact that I changed direction or something like that. So that's kind of one of the main things that I really kind of focus on as far as when I do my training and stuff is it's not so much on necessarily speed or anything. It's more on the precision and the correct movement, I guess you'd say. So she's getting it. She's coming along, definitely having improvement. I mean, honestly, we really haven't had a ton of training sessions yet. I don't know if she's even been here quite 2 weeks yet, but it'd be pretty close if it has been 2 weeks. I guess she came here on like the 1st, so it's not quite been 2 weeks yet. So yes, that's kind of where we're at with her. She's doing well, definitely improvement from when we got here or when she came here. So I do like the fact that her head's coming down much more relaxed and everything like that. And this will just continue to improve and build and stuff like that, because what I'm doing is I'm exercising her thinking side of her brain. It's going to just become more natural for her to go and use that thinking side mindset and just hopefully reduce that reactive mindset too. So that's kind of what I've been kind of focusing on, what we've been doing, her kind of an update with just what she's been working at and everything. And I just kind of went a little bit backwards before kind of keep pushing forward too much. I didn't want to get too far ahead of myself when she still had a little bit of work back here that we needed to kind of fine tune and stuff, but she did really well. All right, Nova. we'll call that good for today. You did really good. It wasn't a ton of work, but it was at least important that you did it all right. So I appreciate that. All right, thank you guys very much. We'll talk to you guys later.